want to buy pierogi from a guy who won't sell it to somebody based on his politics, I think that would be wrong. You wouldn't buy from somebody who didn't sell to black people or gay people or transgender people or anything like that. At that point, the police came.
Alan Dershowitz there attempting to make pierogi-gate a thing, but it's just not going to happen, Alan. And not this time. Recap video posted by Alan Dershowitz earlier this week to again make himself seem like the victim after a pierogi vendor refused to sell to him at a farmer's market last week. Anna and super producer Kate covered the story last week while you were out, Jang. But I guess we'll get your initial thoughts because there's so much more that we need to get into here. And now I'm hungry for pierogies.
Yeah, so I really thought that Alan Dershowitz not being able to eat the pierogi of his choice was one of the larger issues in the country. So I'm glad that it's risen back up in American politics. But seriously, the entitlement complex that Dershowitz has and how supporters of Israel try to intimidate anyone and everyone who dares criticize Israel is amazing. And in this next altercation that Alan Dershowitz started with them again, you're going to see him accuse several people of being anti-Semites. You want to guess what religion they are? All right, well, you'll see in a minute.
Yeah, we'll give you a refresher. The entire situation, as we said, happened last week after the owner of the Good Pierogi food stall refused to serve Dershowitz because they disagreed with his politics.
And I walked across the area, and there was the pierogi place where you could get the kind of things my grandmother made. I had some time before my drink was ready, so I went there and I said, "Oh, can I have 6 pierogi?" And he said, "No." I said, "Oh, you've run out of pierogi? Too bad." No, we have plenty of pierogi. I just won't sell them to you." "What do you mean you won't sell them to me?" "I won't sell them to you because I don't approve of your politics. I don't approve of who you've represented. I don't approve of who you support." The clear implication was that he opposed me because I defended Donald Trump on the floor of the Senate. I was a Zionist. I noticed the week before I went there and I was wearing my other shirt. I wasn't wearing my farmer's market shirt. I was wearing Proud American Zionist shirt. Proud American Zionist, red, white, and blue. And I recall that he looked at it strangely, but I didn't talk to him.
Appreciating detail here from Dershowitz. 2 things to note. First, the co-owner of the pierogi stand, Krem Miskevich, goes by they, them. And they've corrected Dershowitz multiple times of that fact. Second, private businesses have the right to refuse service to people unless it's discriminatory. Under federal law, political affiliation is not a protected class when it comes to discrimination. It is in some state and local jurisdictions, but not Massachusetts. So what's happened since our initial reporting? Well, we'll tell you, Dershowitz announced on social media that he would return to the market to demand that he be served. In the days leading up to the latest confrontation, Dershowitz had claimed that he was refused service because of his identification as a Zionist, calling the interaction discriminatory against his Jewish religion. He even circulated flyers at the market on Saturday, claiming the vendors were anti-Semitic. He openly tried to switch it from politics to religion because that's a protected class. But things came to a head yesterday because, true to his word, Alan Dershowitz tried to yet again basically demand Miskevich sell him pierogies. Didn't work. This time, he brought a gift, signed copy of his book, which Miskevich and their wife refused. We don't want the book, okay? And no pierogies, okay? Sadly, I can't show you the video of the confrontation, but here is what was said. "I'm here in an effort to try to restore community and to ask you to sell me pierogi in the interest of keeping the island together so we don't have to have 2 pierogi stands, one for anti-Zionists and one for people who will sell to anybody. So I'd ask you to please just sell me any one of your products to show that you're prepared to sell to anybody and not allow your anti-Zionism to decide which people you'll sell to." Miskevich tried fighting back, but Dershowitz continued to call them and others defending them bigots and anti-Semites. He also tried to use the fact that they protested the Jewish cultural festival as proof of their anti-Semitism. None of this worked and riled people up more. My grandparents died in the Holocaust. Don't you call me an anti-Semite, protested one man, while another market goer said, my Jewish culture is a history of resistance to genocide. We are not anti-Semites. We stand against oppression of all people. Talia Weingarten, one of the Jewish Cultural Festival protest organizers last year, also clarified to Dershowitz that the protest was not anti-Semitic, but was peaceful. Peaceful stand against oppression and genocide. Dershowitz was eventually escorted out of the farmers market. Sad, angry, embarrassed, and pierogi-less. Something that's important to note as well. Prior to the second confrontation, Miscavige clarified a few things that Dershowitz missed, apparently, that probably would have been helpful to him. When Dershowitz came to our booth, I experienced a surge of emotion. As a chef, I love to share what I cook with the public, regardless of who they are. In this case, what was in the forefront of my mind was the fact that this was the high-profile attorney who represented several sexual predators and abusers, including Jeffrey Epstein. I have no desire to argue about the legal system in the U.S. or one's right to a fair trial, but I personally know too many sexual abuse survivors. Mr. Dershowitz consciously decided to befriend and defend men who have been accused of abusing and harming women. Selling to Alan Dershowitz was the equivalent to supporting his decisions and statements. And now here's the kicker. I do not wish to argue with Mr. Dershowitz about Israel. I, Krem, am Jewish. Members of my immediate family live in Israel. I love Shabbat, baking, challah. My friends call me Rabbi Krem, and I have personal relationships with both rabbis on island. Prior to this incident, good pierogi had never refused service to anybody. It wasn't just Rabbi Krem, Jank. So many others, and as we read the one comment, one proclaiming, I'm Jewish and I don't support you, basically, paraphrasing. Do you think people are tired of these gimmicks? They're tired. And they're not even creative. It's not even like people like Dershowitz are trying very hard anymore. They're still going with the same thing they went with 20 years ago. But circumstances and world events have called them out.
Yeah. So defenders of Israel like have an automatic reflex. Like, if you hit the knee and your foot goes up like that. You say like, oh, it rained in Israel today, anti-Semite. Wait, there was a random small politician in the Knesset who was convicted of corruption, anti-Semite. Well, hold on, wait, I'm not. What do you mean, anti-Semite? But they killed over 20,000 children, anti-Semite, blood libel, anti-Semite, right? So like, you can't say anything about Israel without being called an anti-Semite. It's a one-trick pony, and to your point, that pony's dead. And they're beating a dead pony, okay? So in this video, I'm sorry that we can't show it to you guys. Sharon just explained it to you, but I watched it. And it was hilarious because he's like, you're an anti-Semite. And that person's like, I'm Jewish. He's like, you're an anti-Semite. That person's like, I'm Jewish. You're an anti-Semite, I'm Jewish. Okay, like it was, and then one of the guys is like, my grandparents were killed in the Holocaust, as Sharon told you. The other one was like, they call me a rabbi. The other one is, and my favorite though was one of the people that was at the booth and refusing to serve him. She said, look, it's part of Jewish culture to resist genocide. I mean, I don't know that there's anything more core to the Jewish culture, right? And I love that person. She's totally right about that. You're supposed to, first of all, you're supposed to question people in authority. You're supposed to question the rabbi. That's part of what I love about Jewish culture, right? And so, so certainly you're supposed to challenge your own tribe, etc. And you're supposed to stand up for the powerless, and you're supposed to stand up for people who are victims and being abused, etc. So Alan Dershowitz does the exact opposite. He stands for the powerful who are doing the abusing, and he's done that his whole life. So now look, as a lawyer, I get that somebody has to do it. But I want to tell you a little bit about that, and then I want to go back to what he's done with Israel. So he didn't just, he mentioned, oh yeah, they probably didn't like that I represented Trump. You're leaving out a couple of people. He also represented Jeffrey Epstein and O.J. Simpson and Klaus von Bülow, let alone many others. If you don't know, because Klaus von Bülow is a little old school, he killed his wife. But don't worry, Dershowitz got him off. He was convicted originally, then won on appeal, okay? OJ also got off. Jeffrey Epstein, well, you know how that ended. Okay, so now, but you're a lawyer, that's how our system works. Somebody needs to defend them, right? But in none of those cases was Alan Dershowitz a court-appointed lawyer. No, he jumped out of his seat. I'll defend them. I want to be rich and famous. Oh, you killed your wife? Oh, me, pick me. Oh, you also killed your wife and the random waiter. Me, pick me, pay me, put me on TV. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein, you raped hundreds of young women. Pick me, I'm Alan Dershowitz, I want to be famous. Okay, so that's who he is. Donald Trump, same thing. It's oh no, I didn't get served a pierogi. Dude, there's 61,000 dead Palestinians. There's over 20,000 dead Palestinian children. They starved 90 children to death in just the last 2 weeks. But you didn't get a pierogi, and you want us to cry for you? But that's the entitlement complex of Israeli supporters. And I don't mean Israeli supporters overall. I mean in this current regime, the one conducting the genocide, the one that is 50 times the terrorist that Hamas is, having killed that many civilians, having killed 500 times the number of children that Hamas has. And Alan Dershowitz might as well put on a cheerleader outfit, get some pom-poms, get his old shorts, classic Alan Dershowitz shorts back on, the ones he had while getting a therapeutic massage at Epstein's. Alan, that you said it, you were there, you got a massage, but he says, it's okay, I had my shorts on. Did you also have the cheerleader outfit on? So he then goes and goes, you see, the Palestinians being starved to death are not the real victims. I am the real victim. Put me back on TV. I want to be famous. I'll defend anyone. You murdered your wife. You call Alan Dershowitz right away. No, don't get a publicly appointed lawyer. Don't get any other lawyer. I want all the fame. Okay, that's who this sick guy is. So is it surprising after he's defended murderers his whole life, and enthusiastically so, that he would go defend the murderers in the Israeli cabinet and the Israeli government, like Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich, some of the most evil men of our lifetimes? No, that's what Alan Dershowitz does. He bathes in evil. Let me guess, Alan, anti-Semite. No one cares anymore. Okay, you abuse that word so much that I'm worried that when real anti-Semitism rises, nobody's gonna believe it, because they're gonna think, oh yeah, somebody didn't get a pierogi, right? Oh yeah, somebody was against the genocide, so they got called an anti-Semite, right? So when people like Alan Dershowitz abuse that word so much, it makes people now, like there's young people growing up saying, oh, you haven't got called an anti-Semite, aren't you fighting the genocide? Oh, you're not, like maybe you're not a good enough person, because everyone who fights the genocide, all the most moral people on earth trying to end one of the worst genocides of our lifetimes, all those wonderful human beings have all gotten called anti-Semites by people like Alan Dershowitz. You're turning it into a badge of honor. It's like sick what you're doing. But my bad, I forgot for a second, you're the real victim, because that's twice you couldn't get a pierogi on Martha's Vineyard. And guys, last thing, think about this, Sharon. He's complaining about not being able to get that particular pierogi when he wants it, while children in Gaza are starving to death. And he says anyone who doesn't, agree that Israel should murder those children is an anti-Semite. Anyone who doesn't sell them a pierogi is an anti-Semite, even if they're all Jewish. Because this isn't about anti-Semitism, this isn't about being Jewish. This is about protecting a genocidal state, because that's what Alan Dershowitz does. He defends murderers and gets off on it.
I think you're right, and I also think you're right about he's bringing people into action, people who were perhaps just at the fair and just at the market doing what they do. And now they're speaking up. The more he does this, the more people say, you know what? Now I'm really going to say something here, where I was maybe even shamefully sitting on the sidelines, or I was saying things quietly in my home. Now more and more people are speaking up. We should also tell you, we'll button it with this. The Vineyard Gazette reports that they had record turnout for pierogies after refusing Dershowitz. So business can still be good. You can stand up for the right thing and still be good.
Okay, Sharon, I'm sorry. I literally have breaking news on this story. I can't believe we have breaking news on this story. Alan Dershowitz, this is a Mediaite headline that just came across. Alan Dershowitz claims defenders of pierogi vendor who denied him service are, quote, a Hamas supporting group.
Stop it.
So wait, so the Jewish people who didn't sell you a pierogi support Hamas because they're anti-genocide. There's no end to it. There's no end to it. Just please go away, Alan Dershowitz. Do everyone, including yourself, a favor. I mean, every time you come out here, we got to talk about how you kept your shorts on. You say, right? And how, anyway, yeah, but unsurprising that he's defended Epstein and Netanyahu, two of the most evil men on earth. Let me guess, Alan. We criticized you, so we are anti-Semites and support Hamas. You guys are so boring, and you're all so stupid, and no one believes a word you say anymore. So keep running your mouth like an idiot. One last thing about how arrogant Alan Dershowitz is. He's like, if you criticize me, you hate all Jews. No, brother, I love Jews. I hate you. You don't stand for all Jews. like, if you don't support me supporting a genocide, you hate all Jews. No, brother, no, nobody hates all Jews. We hate you. We're united in how disgusting a person you are. Stop pretending you represent all Jews.
Yeah, and the other Jews got pierogies and discussed how much they hate him. That's what happened.
That's exactly right.
It's that simple.
All right, we got to go on to the next story.
All right, the next one, rock the boat. Jank, a report from The Guardian is alleging that Vice President J.D. Vance changed the water level of a river for his birthday boating trip. Wow, technically Vance himself didn't change the water level. We'll explain what happened in a moment. But Jank, what was your reaction to this story?
It's a good thing we cut all waste, fraud, and abuse from the government. Jesus Christ, man, this is epic. Even conservatives are like, bro, really? You changed the flow of a river so you can go kayaking? All right, well, let's give you the details, and I got more where that came from.
It all has to do with a recent birthday trip near a particular lake in Ohio, okay, where he wanted to have a good time and he didn't want anything or any act of nature to interfere with it. Vance was spotted in the southwestern Ohio area August 2nd, his 41st birthday, according to social media posts that noted he was seen canoeing on the Little Miami River, a tributary that Cedar Creek Lake feeds into. U.S. Secret Service asked the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to change the outflow of that lake. And this was the stated reason why. The request from the U.S. Secret Service was made to support safe navigation of the U.S. Vice President's security detail for an August outing. But The Guardian got a tip for the real reason why the lake's outflow was changed. One source with knowledge of the matter who communicated with The Guardian anonymously alleged that the outflow request for the Cedar Creek Lake was not just to support the Vice President's Secret Service detail, but also to create ideal kayaking conditions. Specifically, the outflow request was intended to raise the Little Miami River's water level. Guardian was unable to verify that claim, but if the report is true, it casts them down on the Trump administration's mission to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. While there is no allegation that Vance's office did anything illegal, ethics lawyer Richard Painter, who served in the George W. Bush administration, said it seemed hypocritical, pretty outrageous for Vance to be receiving these particular accommodations for his family holiday when the administration's cuts have led to drastic cuts in the National Park Service. And we've talked a lot about that, okay? Jank, even to support safe navigation for the Secret Service, I don't agree with you. Just don't go kayaking. Isn't that what you and your family and millions of Americans, if they could even afford a vacation, would have to do?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, there's two levels of outrage here. One is, if that source they have is right, and they changed the flow of a river in America. By the way, that endangers a bunch of things when you ask them to do that out of order. So they're taking water from the lake and bringing it into the river, and you see the water level in the lake drop. I've seen the charts on it, et cetera. And I mean, that could affect the natural habitat, that could affect not only the fish, but the guys who go fishing there, et cetera, right? There's a lot of ramifications that go along with that. That's why they don't normally do it willy-nilly, and there's a whole process for it. And if you did all of that because you wanted ideal kayaking conditions, because you're a fancy elite, that's just unreal, right? But okay, but let's go to what Sharon said, because I was gonna say the same thing. Let's say that that's not true. He just wanted to go kayaking. He didn't need ideal conditions, but God, the Secret Service has a kayak that somehow is deeper than other kayaks. And so that's why they needed it, for the deep Secret Service kayaks, right? Okay, now, if I'm the vice president, do I take vacation from time to time? Of course, you're a normal person, you gotta take vacation. You wanna go kayaking? Okay, no problem, that sounds fun, okay. And then they tell me, well, the Secret Service have to come with you. That makes sense, and I know that comes with a certain amount of cost, and that's okay, because that's how we run this government, and they need that protection. Then if they said to me, sir, we're gonna have to change the course of the river so that the Secret Service can go kayaking with you. So we're gonna have to take all the water out of the lake and bring it into the river. I'd be like, you know what? Don't worry about it. I go to the pool instead, right? Or I go to a movie, check out the new Marvel movie or something, right? No, I don't need you to change the course of the river and the flow of the river so I can go kayaking for a day. No, don't. And so far, nobody's reported how much this costs, but my guess is a lot, okay? And I would be worried about the taxpayers. I would be worried about seeming incredibly aloof and elitist, that I'm changing the flow of a river to accommodate my kayaking ass, right? Like that. But apparently that never even occurs to them. They're like, well, of course, change it right away. Change whatever you need. But sir, weren't you saying that you were gonna fight waste, fraud, and abuse? No. That was just a gimmick so we could do tax cuts for the rich. Remember, I also said we'd cut the Pentagon, then we added $150 billion. And most of that went to my donors like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all those guys. Change the river. I mean, I can tell you a long story about in history how Genghis Khan once changed the path of a river to spite his enemies. But in this case, J.D. Vance is doing it to spite his own voters.
Yeah, let them eat cake. There's this enormous disconnect. It used to be when politicians were stealing, even lots of money, you'd have to catch them on some grainy, surveillance footage or something. They didn't want people to know that they weren't, blue collar roots and this and that. Now, change it. Just change it. We won't go to the pool, jank. We came here to do kayaking, and I want to do it right here. And this is where we're doing it. And my kid's screaming, I want to go kayaking. And so this is what they're doing, okay? He needs a break. Kayaking in this particular place is what he needs to do. And then he'll get back to Epstein strategizing with Kosh Patel and Pam Bondi and her scratch cornea another day.
Yeah.
It's just outrageous. It's outrageous how they're so front and center with it. Outrageous.
Yeah, I forget the exact amount, but it was millions and maybe even in the tens of millions when Donald Trump diverted his entire European trip to go play golf at his course in Scotland, right? Having nothing to do with foreign policy, having nothing to do with anything, right? And it cost a tremendous amount of money. But not only did he want to play golf there, but he wanted everybody covering his course. So he invited the entire world media so he can get marketing for his golf course. And we had to pay for that. And they're pretending that they're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. They are the waste, fraud, and abuse. All right, we're out of time. So Sharon, you're awesome. Everybody check out Sharon at Rebel HQ and on Indisputable and Damage Report. all those wonderful shows.
I love TYT.
We love you back. You are TYT. So when we return, the foreign minister of the Uyghur people, in all seriousness, guys, it's horrifying what's happening to the Uyghurs in China. They have literal concentration camps. So we're gonna, if you don't know about it, you really should. So stay right here, live and free and available to everyone when we return.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
Ring the bell on YouTube today. You know what it does? It actually rings the bell at my house. It's super annoying, but if you do it, it just keeps on ringing. Oh, plus you can find out when the show is live and whenever we have new clips. Ring the bell. Oh no, not again.
How would I look walking the dog on the White House lawn? Would that be?
You know how much it costs you to start an account on tyt.com? Nothing. It's free. So you just go and register in about 2.5 seconds. Then you can chat with us during the show. We read those comments the most often. You chat with each other. Tons of people have become friends there. We're super interactive. We do a lot of polls for our paying members. We sometimes do polls that drive the direction of the show. So that's amazing. There's no other show that's this interactive. And our home base for that is tyt.com. Come join us right now.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I think I was starting to think I don't want to do one thing, and I did live up to that.
Well, mission accomplished then, because Dave was a geologist, and now he's helped found the Young Turks. Even within TYT, you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So if you want to do different things, you nailed it. All right, last story to end on is a Dave story. Whenever there was something like obvious, glaring, he would go up and ask them about it. Like it'd be like a giant church, right? And somebody's standing in front of it. The usual Dave go, pull up right in front of them. You're like, hey, do you know where there's a church around here? And they're like, right here. It's right here.
Practical jokes, spice up life a little.
We've been around for about 20 years and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's fantastic. It's a story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
All right, now we often talk about the genocide going on in Gaza because it's so heartbreaking and on all of our screens right now. But there's another genocide going on in the world, and that's the Uyghur genocide or Uyghur genocide in China. So we've brought on someone who is the foreign and security minister of the East Turkestan government in exile to talk about it, Salih Hudayar. Salih, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Jake?
Good, good. So Salih, you're in America, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Okay. So I'm going to ask you about the genocide, and then I'm going to ask you about the government in exile because I'm very curious about that, and then begin to understand how there's a way to make a difference. Okay. So first of all, for the folks who don't know, who are the Uyghur people in the first place?
So the Uyghurs are an ethnically Turkic people who have been living in Central Asia for thousands of years. They are based mostly in East Turkestan, which is the Turkic homeland. In fact, it's the cradle of Turkic civilization. Historically, East Turkestan has been independent, but in the late 19th century, the Manchu Empire conquered East Turkestan and annexed it as Xinjiang, or meaning the new territory or the colony in Chinese. In the 20th century, we declared our independence twice, in 1933 as the East Turkestan Republic before Soviet intervention, and then again once more in 1944 until 1949 when the Chinese communists invaded East Turkestan and has been occupying it since.
Yeah, so of course, a lot of people who watch the show know that my last name is Uyghur. That's how we pronounce it here in America. But in Turkey, it is pronounced Uyghur. That is the Turkish and Turkic way of pronouncing it. And you might hear it in the American press as Uyghur, the Uyghur people in China, but it's all the same thing. It's Uyghurs. Now, I am not ethnically Uyghur, but the reason why my last name is that is because in 1923 in Turkey, everybody had to pick last names as part of the modernization from Ottoman Empire to the Republic of Turkey. And I say all of this because to back up what Salih said about how Uyghurs and East Turkestan is the cradle of Turkic civilization, because that's why my family picked that name, because the Uyghurs were the first Turks that created language, and their language was used in both the Mongol Empire and the Chinese Empire. So it has a deep, rich culture and values education. It's a beautiful culture. So as you just heard there, it was taken over by China, and you know that it's taken over when their version of the name is the colony. So thereby indicating not part of us, but something we just took, right? So now that's been the case for a while, and the Turkic people there want independence. Of course, China doesn't want to give them independence, but lately things have gotten much, much worse. So, but before we get to the much worse, actually, you left when you were 7 because of oppression and moved to America. So what was the oppression you were living under back then?
So, especially after the fall of, since China occupied East Turkestan, it's been engaging in a broad campaign of colonization and forced assimilation. And then with the fall of the Soviet Union and the independence of the Turkic Central Asian states, this gave hope to our independence for our people. And so you had more political and social activism across East Turkestan. And China feared this, so they began to engage in a what they call the Strike Hard campaign, in a series of Strike Hard campaigns that essentially laid the groundwork for the ongoing genocide that we are seeing today. So they began to mass arrest tens of thousands of people. They began to curb our religious and cultural activities and practices. And so a lot of people, anyone that the Chinese government, anyone who resisted assimilation, the Chinese government began to label as so-called separatists and ethnic nationalists. And again, this is mined before 2011, when China began to use the global war on terror to just blanket, to use the so-called fighting against terrorism narrative. So my father fled in 1995, and he ended up in the U.S. in 1998 as a political refugee. And then we were able to reunite with him in 2000.
Okay, so yes, America and Israel have taught the whole world and all of the autocratic governments that you label all of your enemies terrorists, and then you're done with it. Then they're the eternal bad guys, and you're such an angel for fighting back against them, from speaking their language. Wow, seems very terroristic. All right, now let's talk about the horrors that have ensued since then. Tell us about the camps and tell us about what they're doing now.
Well, so the Chinese government actually began to lay the foundations for the camps as early as 2012, 2013. If you look at Google Earth and look at the satellite imagery analysis of many of the camps that are present today, they started clearing the fields to build these camps. So in 2014, China launched the so-called People's War Against Terrorism. That's what they call it, which is the euphemism they use to describe the ongoing Uyghur genocide. So they began initially arresting men, between 15 and 45. Then by 2016, they expanded it to our entire population, to where anyone who had previously engaged in any religious practices, anyone who had contacts with anyone overseas, including my own relatives. Over 100 of my relatives were taken into the camps, and that was the sole reason, is because you had contact with so-called foreigners or anyone who had traveled abroad. The Chinese government, they have a list of like 70 plus reasons why you have to be re-educated. So essentially, they called it as re-education camps, but in reality, it's concentration camps. In these facilities, our people are being tortured. They're being forcibly medicated. They're being forcibly indoctrinated. Many of our young and healthier ones are, getting screened and taken and disappeared at night. And many people think it's for organ harvesting. The Chinese government in itself stated that between 2016 and 2017, that they collected the DNA samples, voice prints, and retina scans of 36 million of our people in East Turkestan between the ages of 12 and 65. Initially, the Chinese government denied these camps and stated that they were for vocational training and education. Then, as the international community by 2020 began to pay attention, China released a white paper stating that these were, again, vocational training centers, and that they were uplifting Uyghurs from poverty, providing them jobs, and teaching them the Chinese language, and that they had sent 1.29 million people per year between 2014 to the end of 2019, or roughly 7.8 million people into this concentration camp system. And that doesn't include the millions that are, that have been given, according to Chinese judicial data, over 578,000 Uyghurs are serving anywhere from 5 years in prison to life in prison for various crimes. And we don't even make up, East Turkestan doesn't even make up 2% of the total population of the areas under the control of the PRC, yet we have over 33% of the prison incarceration rate.
So, unfortunately, there's a lot of telltale marks of each of these genocides, and you see, the pattern repeating itself. So you take a different minority group. So in this case, it's Turkic people that are not ethnically Chinese. You isolate them, and then you occupy their land, and you call it either a colony or an occupied territory, right? You take away their rights, and if they dare speak up or just even speak their own language, or even pray in a way that the government doesn't like, you put them in a concentration camp and call them terrorists. So in your case, the American government has officially recognized it as a genocide, and you were a part of that. You talked to Senator Cornyn and Mike Pompeo at the time. So tell me about how you got the U.S. government to call it a genocide?
Well, we started initially in 2017 in Oklahoma. That's when I first started reaching out to Senator Lankford's office. And I actually met with him a couple of times to press our issue, to get him to introduce a Uyghur Policy Act similar to the Tibetan Policy Act, and to initiate U.S. policies to address the crisis. Then I moved up to Washington, D.C. in August of 2017 to advocate for East Turkestan. And with like-minded other young Uyghurs and Kazakhs, we founded the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement, or now known as the National Movement, to advocate for an end to the genocide, to advocate for recognition of the genocide, end to genocide, sanctions against Chinese officials and entities, and ultimately addressing the root of the problem, which is Chinese colonization and occupation of East Turkestan, to advocate for our people's right to national self-determination and ultimately independence. Initially, the U.S. government was very slow. They were very skeptical in the sense that they didn't. It's not that they didn't know what was happening. It's just that at the time the U.S. was trying to engage in a trade deal with China, so they don't want to really upset China. But with continuous public advocacy and meeting with members of Congress, we were initially able to get Senator Cornyn and others to introduce legislation to recognize the genocide. And shortly, we repeatedly pressed the State Department to recognize this genocide, and finally, right before the first Trump administration's initial term ended, we held a rally in front of the State Department and delivered a letter to Secretary Pompeo urging him to make it his legacy. And so on the last day, they recognized it as a genocide. But despite the recognition, there has been no meaningful action. In fact, both the incoming Biden administration reaffirmed the genocide recognition, but no meaningful action has been taken. Our people continue to be interned in these concentration camps, in these prisons. Millions continue to be enslaved across factories inside East Turkestan, and China is now transferring Uyghurs out of East Turkestan into Chinese provinces. There's new reports stating that the Chinese government has plans to expand organ transplant facilities, which are essentially organ harvesting facilities across East Turkestan.
Yeah, so in America, sometimes you hear some wives' tales about people taking your kidney and stuff like that. But in some places in the world, they are not wives' tales. It happens, and I mean that is just absolutely brutal when you're harvesting organs from live human beings, because they're a different group and they're a minority, etc. So, and it's so hard to know how much they're doing that. Because like Israel, they're not going to allow any journalists in there, right? There's not going to be any reporting there. So tell me a little bit more about, do people ever make it out of the camps? And what do they say if they make it out of the camps?
Well, the few people that have been able to make it out of the camps and out of East Turkestan are people who have either dual citizenship or whose husbands or wives were citizens of other countries. So they were either citizens of Kazakhstan or Pakistan, and because of that, they were able to get out, or of other countries. Whereas the ones that are coming out in East Turkestan, many of them are dying within several days. As soon as they're released, several days later, they're dying, and they're coming out in a vegetable stage. And if you look at pictures of starved people, that's the type of images that have been shown of Uyghurs that are coming out, but they're dying after they come out. That's the sad things. And China officially claims that it shut down the camps, and that now they have provided Uyghurs with jobs, and they're sending them to to secure jobs inside Chinese provinces. What they're really doing is they're trying to alter their demographics and slowly ethnically cleanse East Turkestan out of our population to make us an actual minority. Because in East Turkestan today, we are still the majority of East Turkestan's population.
Yeah, I want to get to those forced marriages in a second too. So, by the way, if the Chinese government disagrees with anything we're saying on this show, happy to have a representative come on and debate Salih Hudayar or another representative of the East Turkestan government in exile. So now, do you get to talk to your family that's left in East Turkestan, or is that become impossible now?
No, unfortunately, since really the summer of 2016, 2017 was the last time I was able to communicate with anyone. In fact, it was my grandfather who warned me. You know, when we spoke with him, he said, "Don't call me anymore. I don't know you. You know, I'm too old to go to school. Leave us alone." And the school, again, is the euphemism for the concentration camps, because again, what does China call it? These are vocational training schools. We're training these Uyghurs, we're providing them with jobs, we're educating them. We have billionaires, we have doctors, we have scientists, we have scholars from all parts of our society, people who have PhDs who don't need vocational training, who are being sent into these camps. And many of our key scholars, you know, whether it's religious scholars or cultural leaders, many of them have died in the camps. And China says that, oh, they died of, you know, the China doesn't tell us what the reason that they died. The few instances where they said they died from tuberculosis.
Yeah. On top of all the gross injustices that have happened there, the fact that they're kind of separated from the rest of the world and no one can talk to them and no one ever hears about them makes it extra frustrating, like really enraging. And because, so when you have your own family members saying, "Oh my God, don't call me," that, you know, of course what that means is, and I've heard this from other Uyghurs as well, that the minute you know, the Chinese government thinks that they're communicating with someone in America, they're goners. They're going into camps, and so then it makes them reject their own family members. Like, no, I don't know them. I don't want to talk to them, etc. Because it's a one-way ticket to a concentration camp. And so it's really heartbreaking and unreal what's happening there. All right, now tell me about the government in exile. What is that? How did it form?
So the East Turkestan government in exile was officially formed in 2004 to continue the fight for East Turkestan's independence and national self-determination. Prior to that, we had the East Turkestan National Congress, or the National Committee, and it was based out of Central Asia. Briefly, before the Central Asian governments, you know, because of their ties with China and the SCO, they banned any form of East Turkestani or Uyghur political or otherwise even human rights advocacy in Central Asia. Turkey also did the same thing, and so our leaders in 2004, our predecessors, they were able to you know, find some you know, opportunity here in the United States where you know, there's freedom to, you know, engage in political and human rights advocacy without, you know, any country or any government telling you can't do that.
Okay, tell me about the, and that makes sense. You were earlier, you were voted prime minister, and now you're the foreign and security minister, right?
Yes, in 2019, I was as part of, because of my advocacy in igniting attention to the Uyghur genocide and igniting, you know, our youth across the global diaspora to, you know, engage in similar activism in their host nations. Our people felt that, you know, they nominated me for the position to run for prime minister. I had no intention to do that. So elections are held every 4 years, where our diaspora communities, every host country elects representatives to send to our parliament in exile to represent them in our parliament in exile, and then the parliament in exile elects the government leadership. So I briefly served from 2019 to 2023 as the prime minister, and then in 2023 November, I was appointed by the new government leadership as the foreign minister.
And you used to live in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma. I spent most of my life, I would say, I'd spent in Oklahoma before I moved up to Washington, D.C. to advocate for my people.
Yeah. So it is amazing that the government in exile for East Turkestan was in Oklahoma for a while. So that's
well, no. Our government in exile was always based in Washington D.C. It was formed in Washington D.C. It was based in Washington D.C. I just at the 8th General Assembly. That's when I was elected.
Yeah, I should have said more accurately that the foreign and security minister for East Turkestan lived in Oklahoma, grew up in Oklahoma. But you did live there when you were younger and moved to 7. All right, last things here. I'm talking about the forced marriages. I've had stories told to me by other Uyghurs that they're taking the Uyghur women, the Turkic women, and after they move the men into the camps, the Turkic men, they're forcing them into marrying Chinese husbands and not allowing the kids to learn the Turkic language. So the kids then think that they're completely Chinese and forget that their Turkic past even existed, their identity even existed. Now that I heard that from someone who was not in the government in exile. How true is that? Do you have more about that phenomenon?
Yeah, it's absolutely true, unfortunately. In fact, as part of the ongoing genocidal campaign that the Chinese government started, they had a policy where they sent, according again this to the Chinese government itself, they sent over 2 million Chinese government officials to the homes of Uyghurs to live with us as so-called relatives. And many of these homes, the men are taken. So you have, you might have even seen images and videos of this. The Chinese government male officials, they're sleeping with our women underneath, the same covers, and they're promoting our women, trying to get Chinese men from other parts of China, to come to East Turkestan, saying that if you move to what they call the new territory or the colony, we will provide you job opportunities. We'll provide you an ethnic wife. All these things are true. In reality, what this is, Cenk, is that this is state-sponsored mass rape. That's what it is. It's not just forced marriages. It's the state-sponsored mass rape of our women. And when it comes to our children, I mean, not only are they forcing our children to, forget their culture, their language, their identity, they are forcibly separating our children. Again, the Chinese government's own data shows that up until 2019, they separated over 890,000 Uyghur children and put them up in so-called state-run orphanages and boarding schools. And if you look at the few journalists that were able to get anywhere near these facilities, that there's police forces and security forces, Chinese security forces, preventing them from coming near this. And there's high walls, barbed wires, and even watchtowers. So essentially, what it is indoctrination camps for children. And then you see Chinese social media, where our children, our Uyghur children, are dressed up in little miniature Chinese People's Liberation Army uniforms, and they're forced to, sing these oaths, loyalty to China, and that they will fight against, the so-called terrorists, again, their own people. This is what's happening. I mean, our identity is not only our identity is being stripped, but our future is being taken from us.
Yeah, the reason why this genocide is particularly haunting is because they're systematically trying to erase the identity altogether so that people forget who they were and think that they're Chinese, a different people now. And that is amazing. Try to wipe out an identity off the map in modern day, planet Earth. Well, it's unbelievable.
It's not just our identity that they're trying to wipe out. They're trying to physically wipe us out as well. This is why they forcibly sterilized over 300,000 of our women. The Chinese government itself, the Chinese state media stated that they prevented 3.7 million illegal births between 1989 and 2009. And post 2009, when the genocide has ramped up, you bet they forcibly sterilized forcibly aborted many more children. of our unborn babies. So they're killing off a part of our population through torture, through organ harvesting. They're enslaving our youth, our men, if not, and they're dying. In slow but surely they're dying, whether it's through torture, whether it's through organ harvesting, etc. Our children are being taken away from us. Our women are being forced to, essentially they're being systematically raped, and to where the Chinese are trying to essentially breed us out. And what their goal is, within the next coming decades or two, they want to reduce us to a so-called manageable size, to where we truly become a minority in our own country, to where within 50 years, there's nothing left of us.
Yeah, wow, it's brutal. And so last thing is, what if anything can people do to help fight back against this?
Well, one is to learn more about this. Just Google Uyghurs, Google East Turkestan. Urge our members of parliament to, vote, members of Congress to, pass the Uyghur Policy Act. There are a couple of bills in Congress that need to be passed, and they're stalling on it, which is ridiculous. And we also need to, call on, our government. Whether it's Secretary Rubio, who was the champion of the Uyghurs when he was in the Senate. Now he's completely silent. President Trump, he claims to be tough on China, yet he's handing China a trade deal at the expense of millions of Uyghurs who continue to be enslaved and kept in these concentration camps and prisons.
Yeah. All right, Salih Hudayar, he is the Foreign and Security Minister of the East Turkestan government in exile. Thank you for bringing us this story and bringing awareness to it, and for fighting back in any way that you can. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.